Established Runs NBA Injury Report Analysis Show. I'm Drew Dinkmeyer alongside Mike Gallagher. 13 games on the slate. Just before we went on the air, we already got hit with some really, really big injury news. I'm sure there will be plenty more throughout the day. So here with me to get us set up to try to attack this slate is Mike Gallagher. Mike, I see you have the Homer Bushes gif behind you.
Yep.
Why are you sliding into the bushes today?
I planted DeJounte when I talked up RJ Barrett all day and the content, and I'm just so embarrassed. Like, why didn't I plant RJ? But, and then, I mean, it's definitely Homer Bush kind of a day with all the injuries, and we're going to have some correct stuff, but we're for sure going to miss some stuff today.
Yeah, there's just a lot. So let's get into it. Let's start with the Nets, because this is a situation that just broke basically like 10, 15 minutes before, we went on air here. LaMarcus Aldridge, Kevin Durant are both going to miss tonight. We did see Nick Claxton, even after those comments from Nash, we did see him break into the rotation last night, which was surprising. It's even more surprising in the context of LaMarcus sitting now, in the sense that they weren't just holding back LaMarcus's minutes to get him through the back-to-back. They actually wanted to play Claxton a little bit last night. So matchup tonight is with Houston, much more favorable matchup. James gets a chance to go back in front of the Houston fans, has not had that opportunity because, remember, pandemic, did not have the fans in the stands. So I'm sure it'll be an interesting level of support for him in the stands tonight. And he'll get all the usage in the world to, put up one of those vintage Harden, Houston type performances that we've seen. We know that James Harden's going to be the top projected play on the slate. Maybe him or Jokic. Jokic could contend with if Barton sits there too. But we know he's going to be one of the best plays on the slate. So who else on Brooklyn is potentially going to be in play tonight? How do you see their rotation shaking out?
Yeah, so here's the game that KD sat, and there's a lot of similarities here. You could see that, you know LaMarcus as well, but LaMarcus off the bench. Joe Harris wasn't in there, so I mean, that kind of looks like a starting lineup that we might see, right? The only question is, as you mentioned, with Claxton. So he kind of subbed in with Harden when Harden got staggered, and that was a big trend last year. So if you have Harden by himself without KD, do you lean into that? And I kind of think you do. So I kind of think that...
I think they'll start Claxton.
Yeah, I agree. So I think that makes sense to start him. Paul Millsap being kind of the bench four. Yeah, Blake Griffin will definitely be back in the rotation now. Definitely more Cam Thomas minutes. They're going to need his scoring to fill most of the non-Patty stuff, maybe some overlap as well. James Johnson's minutes should be a little bit safer. He had a really good game yesterday. It's going to be, James Harden. I was able to sneak in some James Harden overs, and I'm pretty pumped about it.
Yeah, those are good ways to find yourself to getting limited really quickly. But make money while you can.
I didn't bet a lot. I didn't bet a lot.
With our prop stuff, we don't give out kind of news related stuff because of that, because it also gets pulled so quickly. But in the context of Claxton, the thing that I'd note is when you're without Durant and you're without kind of that in LMA, in this game they had LMA that they could slide into the second unit, right, and carry a lot of usage there. They don't really have that, so you got to think like, okay, how are they going to try to carry the usage in minutes that James is off the floor? And there probably won't be a ton of those minutes that James is off the floor. But the way that they can do that is through more kind of playmaking and shooting and in the second unit. And so playmaking and shooting, I think Blake and James Johnson are more the playmaking, Cam Thomas, Javion Carter, more the shooting aspect of things. And then maybe they stagger Mills in some of those lineups as well. And then in the Harden lineups, I think you can play Bruce Brown, you can play Claxton, the guys who are more kind of the dive men in pick and rolls where Harden can create the usage for them. So same with Bembry. So that's kind of my expectation in terms of how they shake things out here. I think in terms of, the secondary Brooklyn guys that could really play well tonight. The other thing is they could start both Blake and Claxton. That wouldn't surprise me as well. I think it depends a little bit on how the Rockets start. We saw them start Daniel Tice last game. But before that, they had been more comfortable starting Christian Wood as the center. I think if it's just Christian Wood, I think you start Claxton, you put Claxton on Wood, and then you can kind of go with the smaller guys the rest of the way. If it's both Tice and Wood, I could see a scenario where they played Blake alongside Claxton there. I don't think it's super likely, in any result, but I could see that being the case. And then in terms of Brooklyn secondary guys that I think could pick up a lot of the work from a fantasy perspective, we've seen James Johnson put up really big games. He can kind of do it all. He's always been a guy who could initiate a little bit of offense and kind of run offense through. And I think Cam Thomas could fire off a ton of shots in the time that Harden is off the floor, which might only be like 10 minutes this game. But I think Cam Thomas is going to have a big usage rate in those opportunities. Yeah,
I think you said it all. I'll add, if Daniel Tice is starting, I'm bringing the Homer Bush thing back tomorrow. I'm very, 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 very confident he's not starting. Silas said they started him for the matchup against JV.
Yeah.
He said they're only going to use him in certain spots against elite centers. He said JV, Embiid, and Jokic were examples.
Yeah.
I like Claxton. I like Claxton, but or Blake, but he's not in that caliber. So that's great. Just knock out Daniel House right now. Daniel House isn't playing, so they're going to probably go smaller. KJ Martin, Jayshawn Tate's going to have a ton of ball handling. Steven Silas and also Kevin Porter Jr. is out. So Steven Silas said it's going to be a group committee between Jayshawn Tate being a really, really heavy ball handler, with Eric Gordon being kind of the secondary ball handler. Also, when Tate's out, so those guys are going to be running a lot of offense through them, and they want to shoot like 45 threes. So I think Armani Brooks starts, as I mentioned, KJ Martin in the rotation for a pretty good bit. Probably a little bit of David Nwaba, and I still kind of don't think Tice plays. So it's pretty attractive. This game should be maybe a little bit closer now with some Nets out.
Yeah, possibly. We'll see what it looks like, but I think that's generally the way. And then I would say that from a DFS perspective, I'm very interested to see what Claxton's conditioning is like. He did get up to like 20 minutes last game, which was encouraging last night. But I mean, the guy lost a ton of weight. They're talking about 20 to 25 pounds during this illness thing. So that's a small concern for me. But if he's starting, I think there's a good chance he can get into the mid 20s for a really cheap price tag. I've also said this before. I said this during the playoff shows last year that we did behind the paywall. Basically, if Claxton is playing without James Harden, he is useless from a DFS perspective, because he is just a good defender that switches out on the perimeter and like stops penetrating guards, which is great from a real life perspective. But it's basically he's just a rebound guy because he's got no offense outside of verticality. And James brings out verticality in everybody. Like obviously we've seen Clint Capella, we've seen DeAndre Jordan at times. Whoever it is, whoever's got verticality, James can make them interesting. And so I think if Claxton's in that starting lineup alongside James, he's very interesting from a DFS perspective.
Yeah, and you could see, I mean, they ran Claxton pretty good bit here, right?
Yeah.
So I mean, that's a really good sign. And then as I mentioned earlier, they subbed him in with Harden.
Yep.
So I mean, it might be a pretty good matchup against Christian Wood's kind of weak interior defense.
If he played, he played 21, but only like 4 in the first half.
Yeah.
If he plays 25 and they're all paired with Harden, I feel very confident that he's scoring 25 fantasy points tonight.
Oh yeah, love it.
So he will be chalky. Harden will be chalky, I assume. There might be some other Nets to pick on, like James Johnson. Cam Thomas is a really long shot dart throw if the game was not competitive or something like that. Okay. Yep. Let's go to the Blazers, where the Blazers are just getting decimated with injuries. CJ McCollum has a collapsed lung that, like, I don't know what happened in the training staff and the injury report. That he was probable to like doubtful to out to collapsed lung, in what they were unable to catch at first. But no CJ, no Dame. They've got a whole ton of questionables. Ben McLemore, Anthony Simons, Nasir Little, Cody Zeller. So, like, what the heck? What are we dealing with Portland tonight? What do you think the different potential outcomes and iterations? We can't cover them all, but what do you think are the most likely tonight?
Well, so in order of likeliness to play, I would put Nasir Little among the questionable tags. I'd put Nasir Little number 1. He got the questionable tag last game. He's warmed up for 2 games straight now. He's on his timeline to be okay. I think he should be in there. I don't think Anthony Simons' injury was that bad. They obviously ruled him out and they're careful, but I think he's got an okay chance to play, but, not quite as confident as I am in Little. I think least likely is Cody Zeller. I mean, I don't feel good about it. And Ben McLemore doesn't really matter, I feel like, if they have Simons and Little in there, but, he got injured in the last game. It matters a little bit.
It matters.
I mean, they got Tony Snell,
it matters just because they run out of bodies. And the other thing you have to know here, they're 14-point underdogs in Golden State. It's very unlikely they keep this game competitive. I mean, we also have the Steph 3-point narrative where he's trying to break or tie Ray Allen's all-time 3-point record before they go on a long road trip tonight. He needs 15 3-pointers made to do so. So if he's anywhere near that, Steph is having a monster game tonight. But like the only way that I really see this game staying competitive is if Golden State spends all of their time trying to get Steph the record and it just disrupts their entire offense, and Portland can kind of hang around because of that. Otherwise, the talent deficit is just monstrous here. So, you're seeing the game against the Clippers where we see Norm Powell played 44 minutes. Dennis Smith Jr. played 39 minutes. Nurkic got up to 30. I think those types of minutes ceilings are certainly there if the game is competitive, but I think they're very unlikely to come through just given, it's a 14-point spread and Golden State's the best team in the league now playing. They've dominated Portland for years with Dame and CJ. Now without Dame and CJ, like Godspeed.
In San Francisco. And just to mention, the last game that Nazir Little was in when Norm was out, so it's kind of a little bit mixed up without the McCollum thing, right, with the wing being out. So like they actually started Snell, and then they started Snell in the second half. They started Little in the second half by mistake, according to Billups.
Right.
And it was still also Nazir Little got hurt in that game, and it was still I think 27-16 split with Little. So even if Little comes off the bench, I think he could have a pretty big role. And like I said, I feel pretty good that he's going to be in there. And then DSJ, I think, kind of comes off the bench with Simons is in there, but plenty of overlap. Billups really, really talked him up. So I think there's plenty of overlap.
I think they like what they're getting from DSJ. I think they also like this is a good opportunity to see more from him. I mean, remember this guy was a lottery pick. I mean, he was a very high upside, talented prospect who has not, panned out to this point and lived up to expectations. But he's going to get an extended look here because they know they're going to be without CJ for a while. So they need and with Dame battling all these injuries, like taking Dame off the ball a little bit more probably helps too. So I do think DSJ, if Simons is out, I think his minutes are exceptionally secure because he played deep into the blowout the game before this.
Yep.
Who was that blowout to? It was Boston. Yeah,
Got
Boston. He played 37, 38, something like that in that game. So
and just a super, super small detail. Billups said that CJ Ellaby point guard minutes did not go well. So
yeah,
like you said,
they don't need
Billups doesn't. If they don't have Simons, then it could be massive DSJ time.
Yeah. So be prepared there. I think his price is up to a point that it's not super enticing. We'll talk about all the DFS specifics on the DFS show behind the paywall tonight with myself and Gary Hartman. But those are the really, really big injury situations. And obviously with Portland, a lot of stuff can cascade there because there's 4 guys that are listed as questionable and their 2 main guys are already out. But there's still more big question marks as well. Luka Doncic, second night of a back-to-back for Dallas, listed as questionable. You were surprised they were listed as probable last night, both Luka and Kristaps. So you were eagerly awaiting that injury report today. What are your thoughts on Luka's likelihood of availability tonight? And no news on Kristaps. He's not listed as anything, so he appears good to go. Yeah, for now.
Yep. He was hobbling, man. First quarter, he kind of stepped on someone's foot. It wasn't like a full turn, but he was hobbling for a good 2-3 minutes there. Not surprising, right? He's listed for a thumb injury, was taped, knee injury, and an ankle injury yesterday. Ankle injury, which he's had sprained 4 times in his career, has to be feeling pretty crappy today. It just kind of feels irresponsible, to play him in a road back-to-back game against a team that kind of took care of them the last time without Luka as well. But yeah, I think it's kind of a lean out where we have to project him in just because it's kind of what we have to do. But if he doesn't play, obviously Jalen Brunson has kind of been cut down by this Tim Hardaway Jr. bench move. He would be moving into the first unit. Brunson would be, and be looking at a pretty good role. Maybe he sees a little bit of Dylan Brooks. I don't think it really matters too much, but I'd be pretty excited to play Brunson, which should be a pretty productive spot for him.
Yeah, and Memphis, they've been playing very well, but they keep running hot on this schedule. The last time they played Dallas 2 games ago, they got Dallas without KP and Luka. Possibly get them again tonight without Luka. We will see. But obviously Jalen Brunson, we've seen lots of the stuff without Luka. Porzingis value increases, Brunson's value increases dramatically, and Tim Hardaway Jr. gets a little bit of a bump as well.
I think he had like 20. I think he had like 28 drives, Brunson, or something absurd in the last game against Memphis. So I'm pretty excited for the drives. Okay,
some of the other question marks on the slate: Tyrese Maxey. Man, the Sixers are frustrating with their injury reporting. Was was apparently didn't even travel to Charlotte last
Well,
game.
let me clarify that. So like he wasn't out for warmups, so we never really got I never got like a clear picture of when he was out there. Doc Rivers said he got in the plane and like never really knew until he got in the plane. So like you piece it together, it made it seem like he didn't even go, but apparently he did.
Yeah.
So yeah, he's gonna be back out there. He said.
Okay. So he's questionable, but we expect him to play.
Yep. According to Keith Pompey, says the plan is for Maxey to be in there.
Okay. So that's an important one for the Sixers. Obviously, last game without Maxey in the same matchup against Charlotte, we saw just loads and loads of usage for Embiid. Took 20 field goal attempts, but another 14 free throws as well. Shot incredibly well. I mean, anytime you can shoot 75% from the field, you're going to have a big performance. Got the overtime boost as well, so really broke the slate. I think, from a matchup perspective with the Hornets as lean as they are, you'll probably see a lot more of that tonight. But Maxey being there certainly provides another person that can take up usage. And just helps the Sixers depth as a whole. I think from a DFS perspective, it's going to be more of the same stuff where it's like, Tobias, Maxey, and Embiid are, the viable options, but none are going to stand out as like great must play type options. But obviously, it's been great to take advantage of the Hornets' shortcomings defensively of late.
Yeah, they get involved in high-scoring games like crazy. And Doc Rivers had mentioned he was going to feed the pig for Embiid. So gonna get some Charlotte barbecue again down there. So
yeah, I
don't think Maxey affects Embiid's ceiling. I mean, just a little bit.
I think slightly. I think very slightly.
very, very, very little. I think they're just going to throw it to him again.
Yeah, and then I would just say, Doc might want to stop talking about his players in post-game conferences. I don't know if calling Embiid a pig and, like ratting out Simmons last year. I don't know if it's going in the right direction for him. Okay, other question marks.
Pig's a filthy animal.
Other question marks on the slate. Josh Hart is questionable. We've talked about this with the Pelicans kind of all year long, that basically like anybody that's been questionable for them seems to take a while to get back. This happened with Brandon Ingram. It happened with Devontae Graham. Now it's happening with Josh Hart. Do we see Josh Hart back tonight?
Didn't practice yesterday, and they said yesterday he was going to go through shoot around and go from there. So I kind of think he doesn't play, but doesn't crack that 75% threshold. They did just call up Trey Murphy as well right before we hopped on. So that's interesting after he played 38 minutes for the Birmingham G League team yesterday. But pretty straightforward. Like they're going to probably start Garrett Temple if he can't go. He's been out for over a week, so definitely feel like for knee contusion, not the same leg that you hurt earlier in the season with the quad tendinosis. So I think he could be back, but just reading the tea leaves, not practicing, given that the Pelicans are not playing very well, certainly possible that he wouldn't play. But I don't think it helps out Ingram's upside. We saw Ingram go for 40. Keep an eye on JV's back. Wasn't listed as an injury report, but I'm here at his back game and surprisingly returned, so that's something to keep an eye on.
Yeah, tough matchup too with Denver, who plays pretty slow. And Denver historically has been a good rebounding team. This year they haven't rebounded the ball very well, but just not the greatest spot. So it increases the upside a little bit for Ingram and Valanciunas. The minutes get filled mostly by guys who are not enticing from a DFS perspective, so probably not a spot that you're super excited to attack tonight. Another spot, the West Coast has a lot of these like secondary guys that are questionable tonight that we can touch on really, really quickly just to kind of mow through them. But Nick Batum is questionable, and it sounds like he's expected back tonight, which, for the Clippers, who've been trying a lot of different things with their rotation of late, trying to like kind of jam Serge Ibaka into the rotation, that would really leave an opportunity to remove him from the rotation. That kind of happened last game. You saw Ibaka did get 7 minutes there, but that is largely because Hartenstein got into foul trouble and eventually fouled out. Ibaka had not gotten into the game until the second half when he got some minutes there. So I think if Batum is to play, Ibaka comes out of the rotation fully. You get some more potential for the Zubats minutes to come way down again because they can go back to playing those small ball lineups. You get potential for Marcus Morris's minutes to come down, Paul George's minutes to come down. Like everybody loses the potential ceiling a little bit just because they can now start to play so many combinations, and they seem to want to get a longer look at Brandon Boston Jr., who's been playing pretty well of late. So this could be a mess where the secondary pieces on the Clippers, if Batum returns, are all very volatile and a little bit overpriced for the situation.
Yeah, I feel like it's been a while since we had Marcus Morris out to start the year.
We have not seen them fully healthy this year.
Yeah. So Batum. So as you mentioned, like it's a combination of having Batum and other guys to really be able to go small. the coaches talk about that. Like, just because you're small at center doesn't mean you're small everywhere else. So if you could kind of compensate there. So take some upside off Zubats. You mentioned the Surge thing. Pretty okay. The word, it was worded okay. The question about Surge and like, not playing, and he literally just said we'll see, and then didn't say a word else. So you would think he's out of the mix there, as you mentioned. Luke Kennard could be affected here with the team coming back.
All of these,
a lot of ways to literally the whole roster besides
everybody's
Paul George.
impacted because there's just so many different ways Ty Lue can play now.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think you're looking to secondary Clippers players for value. I will also note that Paul George has been in a little bit of a shooting slump. Kind of got the shot together in the fourth quarter last game, but has not been shooting the ball well of late. And I know he had a rest game earlier in the week. He's a guy that I always start when you see like a slew of kind of underperforming games in a row. I always wonder what his health is because he's had so many different issues and he's carrying such an incredible load this year. So he's one of those guys to kind of keep an eye on. If you see anything pop up on the Clippers are so bad with injury reporting, but if you see anything pop up with like a probable tag at anything, I would start to get a little bit more cautious on Paul George generally over the next few weeks. The Kings, Mo Harkless, Harrison Barnes, both questionable. They've been playing without them of late. As a result, we've seen Marvin Bagley get into the rotation and play a little bit more. We've also seen Chime Metu start for them. I think if both of these guys are back, I think a lot changes with the rotation. But it's also, new coach because they had a coaching change during the time that they were without these guys. And so I think it just inspires a lot of potential chaos on how the rotation could turn out. And the matchup with Orlando is great. They've got a couple good matchups here, Orlando and then Charlotte from a DFS perspective. But I think trying to figure out how does this impact the rotation? What does it look like is difficult because Luke Walton played really tight rotations. And now if Gentry has everybody healthy, is there a chance that he loosens those rotations up and we lose a lot of fantasy value from it?
Yeah. So to add a couple notes to the injuries, I mean, look at the schedule. They played Wednesday, one game, and that's it. They played one game in the last week. So they've gotten some practice time in there. Tyrese Halliburton was also sick during this time, so he couldn't practice. And Albert Gentry said they were really working on their offense. So that was without Halliburton in the practices. So you would think that Fox could be really involved based on that. Harrison Barnes has also practiced, so he should have a great chance to play, more so than I think than Mo Harkless. Add to that I was trying to look at some jerseys and stuff, and it looked like Metu was so the purple jerseys for the Kings are first and third units for their practices, and their second units are the white ones. And so Metu had a purple one on. So I think that if Harkless is in, then I think he might not even play because Albert Gentry also said that he wants to play Marvin Bagley, and he's kind of earned it with the way he's played. So kind of another penthouse to outhouse situation.
And Bagley could go to Bagley's minutes could come at the center spot. There's lots of different combinations, and so I would just be hesitant on Sacramento guys tonight. I think there's a lot of variance associated with projecting them, and even the guys Fox and Halliburton, who I think are largely unimpacted. There's just a chance that if they try to squeeze everybody into getting some playing time, that Fox and Halliburton, the minute ceiling goes down from that 38, 39 that we've seen during the course of the year to 36, 35. It's a chance. It's a small chance, but it is a chance. So you want to be cognizant of kind of what risks you're taking with Sacramento tonight.
And matchup too. Just quick, they play Orlando, big front court. So that's another thing you got to consider.
Yeah. So we'll see how that one shakes out. Let's go to the Miami and Milwaukee game. George Hill is questionable for Milwaukee. We've seen them be able to play without him. They're pretty healthy now, and so whether he plays or not, I don't think has a big impact. It does impact the ceiling a little bit for Pat Connaughton and Grayson Allen, but not enough that I think it really changes things from a DFS perspective. And then on Miami side, Caleb Martin is questionable. I think that one is interesting just because he is usually the natural replacement for Jimmy Butler. We have seen them just slide Tyler Hero into that starting lineup in Jimmy Butler's absence. But more so for me, the thing that is nerve-wracking about Miami is they just got destroyed by Milwaukee the last time they were playing in this situation without Jimmy and Bam.
I put on the screen here.
And, I mean, it was really bad. And if you look at that, Miami ended up shooting okay from three at the end of the game. They got to 17 for 43 for 40%. But, they could not do anything offensively. They were not getting good looks. Basically, they shot the three ball well in the fourth quarter when the game was out of hand, and it kind of made everything look okay. It's only like a 6-point spread because Miami's at home. You've got the South Beach flu factor in play always with those Miami home games. So I'm very hesitant on the Miami side, even without Jimmy, without Bam. There's a lot of opportunity there, but I really, really worry about what the efficiency looks like tonight. If Caleb Martin was out, I mean, they are really, really crazy thin. What would the rotations look like if Caleb Martin were out tonight?
Yeah, so to add to that too, it sounded like Spoelstra wants to play more PJ Tucker at center. Now, I don't know if that works in this matchup, but something to put in your back pocket, as you kind of alluded to. Like you're at 7 got minutes. Part of that was blowout. And Tucker's minutes were down. This game just went sideways. But yeah, like if no Caleb, so you would for sure see a lot of Max Strus. You have to overlap him with Duncan. Have to play a lot of Gabe Vincent. I mean, it might even make sense to just put Hero on the bench. I think it's a little cleaner. If because it just seems like those lineups haven't really been working, especially with the way it was so poor in the first game. So I mean, the Martin, I think Martin might even start if he can go, but we'll definitely see on that. Like he really has to play, or it's going to be real ugly.
Yeah, this is a situation that I will say, I think Miami players will end up projecting better than I will feel comfortable playing them. Tonight from a DFS perspective, and it's especially if Martin's out, you just like look around where you're trying to put the minutes, and you might even have to give like Haslam a few handful of minutes just to like kind of ease the pressure on the rest of the guys, because you get Akpala stepping into like a 20-minute role. Vincent and Strus would probably play quite a bit, so it gets really messy for Miami. They are really, really bit by the injury bug of late. Okay. In terms of other news, one other small questionable that I want to touch on. Hassan Whiteside is questionable for Utah. Last time Whiteside missed, we saw Rudy Gay play the backup center spot and put up a really, really big line in limited time. And I think that him and Royce O'Neal would really benefit if if Hassan Whiteside was unable to go tonight. It's kind of a somewhat similar matchup, right? Like Minnesota and Cleveland both are teams that like to play bigger, and we still got Rudy at center minutes for the Jazz. I think they just like to spread it out, and like they like leaning on their main guys in these situations. And so you saw they went 8-man without Whiteside. They did not give Pascal minutes in that game, and so it's interesting in the sense that if you condense a rotation down to 8 and you see Gobert up to 38 in that spot,
that's the headline.
You can get some upside from these Jazz guys.
Yeah, Gobert has pretty good stats against Cat the last couple of years as well. And yeah, the headline is look at the Gobert minutes, man. I mean, if he could play that amount of minutes going against a much worse matchup against the Cavs, now he gets a really, really good matchup against one of the worst teams at preventing offensive rebounds and putbacks in the league. So, I mean, it could be just total Gobert smash mode tonight.
Yeah. Okay. Speaking of that game,
just a couple things I was just gonna say we kind of skipped over the Barton thing. I just want to make sure you didn't miss it.
Oh, yeah. Sorry. I did miss that.
You're all good.
I did. On the bigger question marks, we have Jaylen Brown and possibly Horford. They're on the Celtics are on a back-to-back. So that information, I don't know when we'll get. I'd be shocked if Jaylen Brown played. Horford, we need to keep an eye on, just because if he doesn't play, man, like Time Lord, the Time Lord eruption is coming soon. I really feel like it's coming soon. I flag planted him last night. Thought we might be getting it, and then they just kind of got wrecked in the fourth quarter, and you didn't get any minutes. But I think we know what we get without Jaylen. We understand what those situations are like. We get a lot of Dennis Schroeder. Tatum gets a ton of usage. Without Jaylen and Horford, though, you get a lot of Grant Williams. He really slides into that role, and you get a lot more ceiling on Robert Williams, especially in the matchup against the Clippers. I think I think it could be a really good spot for Robert Williams tonight if Horford does sit.
I agree. And just to add a little more color on Jaylen Brown, they said that, or the coaching staff said that they were hopeful he would return on the road trip. So they have one more game in Phoenix, and then they're off till Monday. So if you don't even know if he's going to play on Friday, and you're talking about being cautious, like why would you play him? So as you said, I'd be really surprised if he plays.
Yeah. And then Will Barton, who you mentioned, I was remiss in missing in our rundown here. He was added to the injury report with a questionable tag due to illness, non-COVID related. Barton, man, like if they are without him, they cleared Bones Highland from protocol. So Bones Highland would come back into the rotation, but you basically have, from a guard spot, you'd have Monte Morris, Campazzo, Bones, and then like Marcus Howard, like it gets real thin for finding a fourth guard for the Nuggets tonight. And so you could see the minutes really get up there for Monte Morris as they did last game, for Campazzo as well. Those guys are tough to play together because of their size, but there's really aren't a lot of options. This could be a Bones Highland breakout spot if he's healthy enough to take on the big minutes. Yeah. But we'll see with Barton. He usually tries to play through stuff. His body just hasn't cooperated over the years, so an illness makes me think he will try to go. But we'll see. The Nugs need a win after that thrashing in Chicago.
Just to add a couple things, so Bones is expected to go, according to Mike Singer, who's certainly one of the best.
He is actually technically listed as doubtful on the injury report, but the beat has said he's expected to play.
I would add Devon Reed would probably be the guy that moves up ahead if Barton can't go, and it's also worth noting Bones didn't get sick. Bones was upset that he kind of got pulled out for contact tracing. He was out for the road trip and couldn't go, so. Now he's been able to clear that, and I mean, you expect him to be in pretty good shape. So it could be really, really fun Bones Highland night when they're going to really need perimeter offense to help out Jokic a little bit.
We will see. It also should be a monster Jokic role, regardless of whether Barton is in or not. But if Barton is not in, man, like he's just got to take a ton of shots. Aaron Gordon and Monte Morris's stock would improve in that situation if Barton is out as well. Jeff Green too, because they just need NBA players out there as much as they can. So keep an eye on that. All right. New situations and stuff that we're monitoring. We were talking about Minnesota in the context of Rudy Gobert. D'Angelo Russell is out, but Pat Beverly is back into the mix. We have some concerns about how much Beverly can play because it's been kind of a quicker return than expected from the injury. He's also a player that is very injury prone. He's an older player. So there's a lot of risk here. We saw Bolmero start last game, then get hurt, not be able to finish the game. What do you think? How do you think the Timberwolves respond tonight with Beverly back? Do you think Beverly slides right back into the starting lineup?
Yes, on starting, and they have to cap him. Like if they don't cap him, this is like Jaylen Brown bad. As you mentioned, Patrick Beverly, man, I feel like it's like 6 or 7 times in his career he returns and then gets hurt in that game. And he's aggravated injuries before. Older player, groin injury, gets aggravated a decent amount. Like he's gonna have him cap. We have him at 24. Which I think is fair. I think it's probably maybe on the higher side, but without D'Angelo, maybe he's kind of okay to go. They did list him as questionable in the last game, but and then also just as far as like puzzle pieces, right? Chris Finch is very much all about units and who fits well with who. So taking D'Angelo's offense out, putting Patrick Beverly's defense in. I think Malik Beasley would start. So they kind of have 2 key defensive pieces in Beverly and Vanderbilt. Ant's been okay defensively.
Beasley was the only reason they were able to kind of stay in that game last game. The only reason I'd say maybe not is just because they really would have nothing in the second unit. They'd have to stagger pretty aggressively. But what would their second unit offense even look like in that scenario? Just trying to
get the ball to Naz Reid.
Who really does like Naz Reid is become the big that is a little too interested in shooting from 3 and not super interested in posting up anymore. I mean, he like half the time he doesn't even get down to post up. He just kind of trails the play and like waits to see if he can shoot a 3. So I think that's the one caveat that I'd give there is they just would not have any offense in that second unit.
Yeah, it would be probably Ant staggered away.
You would have to have an early Ant substitution is the way that would go. So I think they can do that either way, right? They either start Bev and like Prince or something like that, give Ant a normal sub rotation, but short stint Bev, bring in Malik then tag out Ant later. So I think either way, Beasley should play mid upper 20s minutes, I think. And I think Bev should be like low to mid 20s if they're being smart with things. And then Edwards and Towns have this huge ceiling to them as well. That was my first of really watching a lot of Bolmero in that last game because we had a prop on him. And it's just a 1-game sample, but he looked lost. He did not look like
he played better. He handles the ball. He handled the ball a little bit. Like when Beverly was hurt going early, and the second unit he was a little more controlled. But Anthony was corner standing action and secondary stuff. Wasn't really getting any sort of in ball action stuff.
He just looked like he didn't know where he was supposed to be most of the time to me. Like there were times where he just like got caught kind of dribbling into like where a player was coming off a pick, and I was like, okay, the guy does not understand what they're doing offensively. So I could see him, his minutes coming way down in this scenario. Okay, let's talk about guys that are returning to action tonight. Are there any guys returning to action, or is it just everybody's injured and we're packing?
I think that's mostly the ends. We got some other. No, we didn't cover the Bulls yet with Matt Thomas.
Yeah, so Matt Thomas, I did not expect to be talking about Matt Thomas as a big
it's impactful though.
But the Bulls are just super shorthanded. Without him, you basically have to see Dosunmu. They're going to qualify for an injury exemption now, but you basically have to see Dosunmu and Troy Brown play a lot. And Derrick Jones Jr. Like there's no other way around it, because basically the rest of their roster, like Matt Thomas played 19 minutes last game. And if you look, where can those minutes go? Well, Vooch played 35 and Tony Bradley played 12 and Simonovic played 1. That is a total of 48 minutes. That's the most that those three players can combine for, because none of them are a power forward. So you look at the rest of the roster and it's like, okay, Dotson could play a little bit. Alize Johnson did not play last game. He's kind of like another center too, based on what he does on the floor, but he could play power forward. So he probably gets into the mix. Him and Devin Dotson probably picks up most of the Matt Thomas minutes. But I mean, you could see Troy Brown play 30 tonight. Like they don't have bodies. And this is with Lonzo playing 40, Levine playing 39, Dosunmu 42. I mean, they don't have bodies right now.
Yeah, two things. Donovan said after the game he did not want to go 8-man, and he kind of got forced into it. Hey, guess what? You're probably going 8-man, and which
I think is a funny quote, because it's like I got forced into going 8-man, and it's like, how did you get forced into going 8-man? Yeah. You chose not to play Alize, and you had Derrick Jones Jr. in foul trouble. So like, if anything, it seems like a willful choice to play 8. But I think that speaks to the lack of confidence that he has in Alize in terms of the lineup combinations that they can make him work at the 4.
Yeah, well, I think he has to get. I think I would bet that Alize is the 8th man. Matchup is a factor against the big Cavs.
So you're saying Alize gets the minutes over Dotson?
Basically, Alize, yes, he gets most of those 19 Matt Thomas minutes, and then maybe they work in somebody else. Dotson will be next, obviously.
I think that's probably true, but I really think there's a chance tonight that we see 6 Bulls players over 30 minutes.
I agree. I think that's probably the most. Like, those guys are going to play a freaking ton.
I think Jones Jr., as much as he can stay out there, Vooch, Ball, Levine, those guys have upper 30s written all over them. Sunmu could get mid to upper 30s again, and then Troy Brown could even get into 30. Like, it's possible that they just go super, super tight.
Donovan did not sound concerned about playing Ayu. Like, the reason he talked about playing big minutes
he's a kid.
Some of the other guys.
Yeah.
So, I mean, Ayu could play a bunch.
He's a kid out there, so I'm sure they're going to be okay with that. Okay, so we talked about the Bulls in terms of new out situations. Memphis, Zaire Williams is out. I do think that's sort of interesting, just because they're so thin without Zaire Williams and Kyle Anderson and Brandon Clark at that 3-4 spot. They'll fill some of those minutes with Santi Aldama, and they'll fill some of those more of those minutes with Jaren Jackson at the 4. Instead of Jaren Jackson sliding over to the 5, that allows them to fill minutes by having Adams and Tillman play the 5 a little bit. But I think it does not only increase the ceiling minutes for the wings, for guys like Desmond Bane and Dylan Brooks, but I think it increases the ceiling minutes for Steven Adams as well.
Yeah, definitely. And then you covered it. I'll add Desmond Bane Dallas narrative after he said, I don't even know Josh Green played tonight. Kill him again, Bane. You can do it. Lots of narratives tonight, man. I'm all about the narratives. Got the Steph narrative.
Bane's just taking names throughout. Winky asking if Stanley Johnson would play tonight for the Bulls.
I don't think he's Stanley Johnson, time, right?
Wasn't he cut? Did they bring him back?
They signed him today. Yeah,
they signed him today. Okay. I was like, didn't they cut that guy? I think that would be a tough ask for him to play the day that they signed him. He also wasn't in training camp as long. He got cut earlier than I expected, if I remember correctly. So I don't know if he signed a little bit late. So I don't know if he's gotten all the time with the Bulls that they'd be comfortable putting him in right away. But that is certainly a risk. They're so thin on bodies.
No I think answering Winky's comments on the free content, by the way. He basically ended my season in a football league, so sorry.
I think it's always a risk you have to think about when you have teams that are really, really thin in terms of like who could be that break glass in case of emergency guy, and Stanley Johnson could be that tonight. We talked about Daniil House out. Corey Joseph is probable. Hamidou Diallo is questionable. I don't think Pistons are really on the radar tonight very much. Slower pace game with Washington. Cade is certainly playable for upside like we saw last game. Yeah. Killian's, making strides, but I think, if Kojo's there, if Kojo's not there, I mean, it's a home game. They probably just call up Saban Lee, right? If Kojo's not there, so
he'll be there. He's got the probable tag. I expect him to be out there. So that's pretty much just got Saban Lee down. Hamidou Diallo. It's basically one of Josh Jackson.
Him or Josh Jackson. Yeah. They just kind of split minutes. So,
and just to add some non-injury stuff, possible lineup change coming. Wes Unseld, time after time after time, keeps mentioning, possible lineup changes coming
for Washington.
So, yeah. So
I don't know this is another one of these situations where, like, what can you do? You're not moving Dinwiddie, you're not moving Beal. So
it would be Gafford most likely.
It'd be Gafford. It's Gafford for Harrell, right? It's like this Knicks thing that we talked about before yesterday, where it's like there's just really not space for them to do the thing that they want to do.
Or Denny or Hall Neto for KCP would be the next.
Yeah, I think that's a tough one to pull off too. KCP's actually like generally played okay for them this year, and a vet. Like I think that one's a little bit tougher. So we'll see. They're clearly playing very poorly right now, and like that opens up the options to have things shake up. I kind of think he'll let things go one more game against Detroit. Because it's like a get right spot, and then if it does not go well, I think you will for sure see changes. Is kind of my instinct.
I think so too. I don't think it's likely, but just wanted to put that out there.
Okay, well that'll do it. 42 minutes on the injury report show today. After a 15-minute show yesterday, we'll be trying to keep it short tomorrow on just a 3-game slate. For those of you that are subscribed to our premium content, I believe Amazon Web Services is functional again. So all of our projections are back up in the right places. Everything is working well again. If they are not, that is on us for not pushing stuff yet. The show tonight will be myself and Gary Hartman, starting at 5:00 Eastern, walking through all of this stuff. Gary's incredible in as a GPP player and talking through things. So always enjoy the shows with him. Mike and I will be back tomorrow breaking down all the injuries at 2:00 Eastern. If you're not subscribed, if you're subscribed or not subscribed, either way, please hit the like button on the show. Please subscribe to the YouTube channel. Get all the notifications whenever we go on air, so we can continue to give this great free content to you each and every Monday through Friday at 2:00 Eastern. Good luck in all your games tonight. We'll see you guys tomorrow.